Hello and welcome. The point of this video is to point out some of the things that need to be improved in the next iteration of the display unit you're seeing here for the Stupid Tourist postcards. So I am going to just start by giving a full view. Unfortunately, I can't get it all onto the screen in one fell swoop, so I'm going to start at the top here with the logo and then kind of bring you down to the middle section where you see the cards and the arrows, and then the bottom section with the base and the mascot. And that is the full view of the unit, and then I'll just kind of show you how it spins around a little bit. Go back and forth with this, and you'll notice I don't have to maneuver the phone and the unit at the same time, so sometimes I'll have to step away. So anyway, that's one full rotation, and as you might have noticed, it's not an easy rotation, and that's one of the issues with the unit. I'm going to put it back to the initial spot here. Okay, so let me kind of go down the list of things that I want to improve in the next iteration of this design. I'm going to start with number one, and it's basically the idea that this thing is too big. Right now it's at about 7 feet. If I go to the top of the logo there, that's at about the 6.5 to 7 feet, somewhere in that range mark, and that's just too big. We want to keep it under about 5.5 feet at most in height, so that most people will be able to see the cards at the right angle without having to look too far up. If you go to most stores and you look at units, they typically don't exceed 5.5 feet, 6 tops. So that's the height, and then on the width. Right now, if I go from the tip of this arrow, which is the furthest thing out, to the tip of this arrow, say, which is the furthest thing out on the right side, then you're looking at about 2.5 feet, which is just a little bit too wide. We want to try to keep it under 2 feet if we can. 2 and change, small change is fine. I think the current width, if you compare this with other display units in stores, it's much wider. So it takes up more space, so retailers may not want to carry it just because it just takes up too much lateral space. So try to get it under 2 feet. So that's the first item. Second thing is, you'll see that you have a card here, a card here, card here, one over here, and then the same thing kind of on this side. I tend to feel like the cards don't have enough density next to each other, meaning there's too much space in between, say, this card and then this card and this one down here. And I think a better way to merchandise these would be to have cards right next to each other, so that you're getting efficiencies of viewing. You can view a number of cards essentially at the same time, rather than having to shift your focus from up here to here to over here, and so on and so forth. Okay, so I want cards closer to each other. They're too far apart right now. Third item, I'm a little overwhelmed, I think, in this particular design by the arrows, and I think the arrows maybe take away some of the flash of the cards, because you've got bright yellow arrow, and then the cards tend to be darker. So we need to figure out a way to make sure the cards have more splash, so that the arrows don't take away all of the attention of the consumer. Okay, so that's number 3. More visual focus points for the cards, which also, by the way, comes through with the density that I mentioned a second ago. Here's a really nitpicky thing. The screws, I'm going to kind of do a close-up here on them. Notice they're a different color than the blue placard behind it. So these really stand out. It's hard to see kind of in the video, but it's you've got gray against blue. They're very prominent, these screws, and I want a way to hide these kinds of attachments because they don't really serve the aesthetics of the unit too well. So maybe the solution is you eliminate screws altogether and you figure out a different way to put these together. But to the extent that we need screws, this solution is not working too well. I want to show you another picture of that. Look at that. It's all you're seeing there is screws. You're seeing the excess part of the screws protrude out here, and that's kind of ugly, and it takes away from the beauty of the design, I think. Okay, So screws. Number 5. Right now the rotation basically happens here at the base, and as I'm going to rotate this a bit so you can see what troubles we're having. Now, granted, this is on carpet, so it'll rotate fine this way. If you want to turn it back this way, it's very tough. It won't go. And it's actually a little bit heavy to rotate this thing. And I know, looking at a lot of units out there, not mine, rotation seems to be an issue. A lot of things that are built just don't rotate well. But I would like to get a smoother rotation if possible for this. But my bigger issue with the rotation actually is the fact that I don't think you should start on the floor. I think you should have rotation start somewhere around, 1 or 1.5 feet up. So the base is static, basically. It doesn't rotate. And then the top part, the remainder of the unit would rotate. And that's what you see in most display unit designs in stores. Is the rotation doesn't start at the base. I think it's a cleaner way to do it, because you don't have to rely on having a flat floor. Floors can be crooked, and it just seems harder to rotate something that's rotating at the base. Okay, so that's number 5. Number 6, this is kind of related to the rotation. This pole, this vertical pole here right down the middle axis that has everything attached to it and then attaches to the rotation at the bottom, is very unsturdy. So you'll see when I try to rotate, well, maybe you can't see it too well in the video, but there feels like there's a big tension point right around here near the bottom when you start to rotate, like the pole is going to snap because of all the weight of all the things attached to it. So I think the mistake is, if you look at this base, the base should have been made thicker. It should have kind of tapered out here and here, maybe to the left, to the right. The mascot, there's not enough there for the taper, so it doesn't really help it structurally, but you needed some other kinds of support that were coming out near the base, if you're going to go with a base rotation, which I suggested not. So anyway, whatever pole you put on there, whether it's going to be attached to the base or not, for rotation, needs to be sturdier, because the unit feels very weak to rotate. It feels like it's going to fall apart. Okay. Point number 7, again, may be hard to see in the video, but these are acrylics, right? So if I want to grab a postcard, you have the acrylics kind of holding them in. You can see the outline there, how the cut was made right through about the center of the card. I'm wondering if we're going to use acrylics again, if we can make the cut just a bit lower, somewhere down here, so that the full shine of the card shows through, because the cards are very shiny, and you want to expose more of the face without an acrylic in front of it rather than less. Okay, and right now it's basically, in some parts, it's all the way near the top, like on the left and the right. In the middle, it sinks down to the bottom. So the cut's okay. Again, you're getting about half of the shine of the card there. So I'd like to get more if possible. If you can cut them lower, if it's practical, I don't know. The arrows, I'm a little worried actually about the point. I mean, it's not really that pointy, but it's pointy enough where, somebody could stupidly run into it and poke their eye out, and then there's a lawsuit, that kind of thing. The up arrows are fine, because it would be very hard to do that there, but on this arrow, this is almost at eye level for a lot of people. I'm going to back up here and show you that. So I'm not thrilled with these pointy aspects of the arrows, so I'm wondering if we can do a design where we don't actually build points, we just either paint them in or avoid them altogether, but not actually have them physically be pointy or rounded pointies, which is what they are now. Okay. Number 9, the stickers. So this is, basically painted wood and then stickers covering the painted wood. All these things are stickers. This is a sticker. The logo part is a sticker here, this blue. The mascot's a sticker, the little saying is a sticker. So the problem with the stickers is they were peeling a lot, and they're hard to stick onto there because you have to have the right wood surface, and then sometimes it just comes off because of time, and we had to re-glue it. So I'm wondering if there's a better solution than stickers affixed to wood. But if we are going to go with that solution, then I've learned that there are certain woods we should be using that are better than others. And then there's some other fixatives and adhesives that we could use to make sure they don't come off. So that was 9. Number 10, This thing is a real pain in the neck to assemble. There's, as you can see, a lot of screws, and there's screws on every side, of course. And I'm going to kind of lump this in with number 11. We want this to be easily able to fit into a car, a standard size car, not a truck or an SUV. And even if we took this thing apart, which we wouldn't want to do because it would ruin the wood, after my contractor put it together, he said, don't take it apart. And I said, well, the deal was we were going to construct something that was easily stored in a car, which means you would have to cut this thing half in size and then store both halves in the car. But anyway, once you put it together, you can't take it apart, otherwise the wood comes apart. And furthermore, I just want something that I can take two major pieces and assemble them together at the client site, rather than one big thing that wouldn't fit in a car. Okay, so the easier the assembly process, the better. Should be able to fit in a car while being transported. And let's see, two last things to talk about here. There is some element of, I don't know if this is really able to be solved, but you have, if you move the unit, some of the cards will fall forward in you know, if they're not packed from front to back. So you know, this comes forward. This already came forward over here. I can push it back, but you know, you move it a little bit and it falls forward, as you can see. So if we have any solutions to prevent the cards from doing that, because once they fall forward, you can't see them as well. Okay, so the images are a little bit muffled. In their back position, they're great. Once they come forward, we're in trouble. So how do we develop a solution to keep them on an angle away from, you know, tilting back from the customer, if that's possible? Even a slight angle is good. The last point is, and I mentioned this I think before, is that it's a very stiff unit. It's hard to rotate, also because it's heavy. So if we cut down a lot of the bulk and we take away the base rotation and put it up higher, and we find other places for people to grab, you know, consumers will sometimes will want to grab by the arrows and try to rotate, and that's not a good idea because you're trying to basically rotate with a weak endpoint, whereas if you grab one of these, it's easier to rotate. So consumers are going to make the mistake of grabbing the wrong thing all the time, and we don't want them to not be able to rotate it, or you know, to break one of these things while they're trying to rotate it. So we need a better solution for turnability, as I like to call it. So that, in a nutshell, is the unit. I'll go again top to bottom, and there you have it. I look forward to discussing solutions with you about improving this display unit. Thanks.